Yeah, this, you do that, then you go, you tighten, more. Yeah, maybe just hold it there. Oh, click there.
I click this way.
Yeah, not this way. Thank you so much.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much. All protocols observed. Good morning. Yeah, my name's Al, as you've been informed. I am a professor of environmental studies at Chuka University, Kenya. I also a researcher in climate change and water resources management, and also involved in ecological rehabilitation project at the moment back home, where agroforestry is one of the major components of that research. And so my presentation today will mainly focus on experiences that we have gotten from the work that I have been leading at Chuka University. Of course, as many people have been asking me, how do you manage being a senior manager in the university and at the same time you're a scientist? But at Chuka University, both I and Vice Chancellor are very keen scientists, and we always create time. We say everybody needs to plan his time to ensure that you can continue being the professor that you are, because we are professors before we are managers. And with that, I have been leading a research work from the university, which of course started from the university in 2020. What governed me or rather motivated me is because Chuka University's niche is environmental sustainability for better life. And that made me to come up with a project together with my colleagues when we founded the Faculty of Environmental Studies, at least to enable the university to do corporate social responsibility in creating sustainability in our agro-ecosystems. So with this, I will proceed from there. At least now you know who I am. Oh, I'm speaking to myself, sorry. What I want to start is a brief introduction. I think this has already been done by my colleague, Dr. Shepherd, already did a good introduction here, so I don't need to go that. But for the sake of putting my mind in order, because if I miss, I then may be confused. Let me say agroforestry is a cultivation system, or rather a cultivation system that merges growing of trees, crops, and raising of livestock in an integrated manner. Just brief as that. But the rest can be details that can be quite involving and engaging because you can spend a whole semester actually dealing with agroforestry issues. There are mainly three types of agroforestry where you can only have maybe crops that are combined with trees within the same space. Or you could also have where we have crops, or other that are trees integrated with parcels or animals in the same place, and also in the that type, which of course my brother already explained, where you can have the three, that is the crops, animals, and trees combined within the same ecosystem. It is in any form. You can mix it in any way depending on your choices. And when we have done studies back in Kenya, we've realized that farmers have different choices which are informed by different factors. And it is always important, if you have to have sustainable agroforestry, to respect the farmers' wishes and perceptions, and to engage them when you are advising them, to involve them in whatever you're doing. So that they are more often than not, of course, when you have these results. You can have this, you can have enhanced resilience of farming system where they are able to be resilient, not only in terms of agricultural production, but also within political systems, within the ability of farmers to cope when there are climatic vagaries and different forms of ability to cope with difficulties that they face. There is also increased biodiversity as people keep planting trees within their agro-ecosystems or rather within farmlands. You'll find that some biodiversity that may have disappeared, they now start re-emerging again, remembering that trees are not just trees, they are also homes to biodiversity. So whenever there is maybe a bird or an insect or some species that could have vanished from an environment, the moment a tree starts coming up, then birds find somewhere to nest and they were able to come back. Then there is increase in biodiversity for that matter. And there is more productivity, of course, and then profitability in terms of funds, of money or income generation, because obviously farmers, as I have experienced them in Kenya, they are concerned about what is there for me. Yes, I'm planting the tree, but what for? And so we have encouraged them to plant a mixture of crops that will encourage environmental sustainability, social, and as well as economic sustainability. So there should be some profitability which can be measured in different ways, either monetarily or in terms of social profitability, in terms of aesthetics of within the ecosystem that they run. There is climate-friendly use of the land compared to monoculture in this case, and all that. Now, nevertheless, its sustainability is in question, or rather it is challenged by many factors. We find that the ability for it to actually remain in practice and in robust practice in different places, and enable me to clarify some things. To me, I'm not looking at agroforestry as a technology, as my brother said. I'm looking at agroforestry as a practice, a farming practice, that, of course, more a form of farm management practice within a country. Over the years, of course, our people have encountered more challenging environmental, economic, and social upheavals or difficulties that obviously they must get involved in and be able to face or to cope with them. And this jeopardizes their livelihood in one way or another. And agroforestry, as one of the approaches or one of the practices, has been used variantly by Kenyan communities or small-scale farmers to enhance their ability to cope with the challenging they face from time to time. I know this. It has finished, of course, there have been pandemics like HIV, AIDS that have come and weakened people on there. There have been Ebola in different parts of Africa, malaria in the tropics, COVID-19 that we all just faced just the other day, a few of such kind of challenges. The skyrocketing fuel prices that are driven from external forces out there also making the livelihoods of these small-scale holder communities are difficult and quite a challenge. You've heard that in Kenya we have had even to revolt against the government because of the way they are taxing, and we are saying no. I think we should develop at our own pace. Otherwise, this movement where you are milking everything is not sustainable anymore, because after we are taxed, we must be left with something in the pocket to keep our children, to feed our children, to take them to hospital. All these factors, of course, needs to be put in balance, of course, and the population and its growth, which has been increasing very rapidly, has become another major challenge to sustainability. But now, the concept that I'm addressing myself to in this topic is the sustainability of agroforestry. And so before I proceed there, I wish to address to what is sustainability. It mainly refers to that ability or capacity of an initiative or the development that taking place, being able to meet its current requirements, of course, that the people are able to get what they can get from the agroforestry system, but at the same time, as they continue practicing it, they should be able to ensure that this practice is going to yield the same benefit or even better into the future. Then that we can say it is a sustainable system. If they are going to engage in any investment that is going to jeopardize their capacity and the possibility of succeeding in the future, then that is not sustainable. Any future development, therefore, and changes that may be, whether it's introduced technology or you bring in new breeds or new species of plants or animals or whatever mixes that you may introduce within the system, if it is going to enhance the balance so that there is benefit for the livelihoods of these people, then we can consider it sustainable. Now, sustainable forestry in that connotation, therefore, is that a practice of growing trees, solely not trees, it is trees and crops together in the same system and create a capacity of ensuring that it will attain its current requirements and at the same time be able to continue meeting the needs of people in the future. This, okay, thank you. This also takes into account the well-being and the quality of life of the current generation or current people into the future. I can, therefore, in this case, coming from an environmental point of view, there are three types of sustainable agroforestry that needs to be looked at. One would be what I would call social sustainability, in that there should be social forestry. When you or other agroforestry, where people are themselves able to socialize with their environment. It is very important that you realize it is people you are dealing with, and people have a culture. They have a social setup within which they stay. So if you have to introduce any forestry species, then you should be aware that they need to be acceptable. They need to be meeting the social or socialization or cultural interest and requirements of the people, their religious concerns, and those issues. So if you look at sustainability, therefore, the social aspect of that sustainability must be addressed in order for social forestry or agroforestry to succeed. The next thing is economic sustainability. There is people are interested also in putting something into their pocket from what they do with this practice. And that's why in one of our projects we have initiated fruit trees, instead of just trees, fruit trees that are able to develop huge canopies and all that in order to ensure that we are taking care of the economic and social aspect as well as we enhance income generation capacities of these farmers, and therefore enhancing the ability of their livelihood to improve and to increase. And then there is environmental sustainability for that matter. This is one of the farmers that is involved in one of our projects because we are doing it as a corporate social responsibility activity by enhancing development within the Rakanithi and the Mount Kenya ecosystem where I'm working. And this is just one of the examples of the improvement that has actually taken place because of farmers actually integrating different type of crops, trees, and all these within a farming ecosystem. And of course, agroforestry involves growing a mix of crops, as you can see here, livestock and trees together, and then it is structurally in a very complex manner. Oh, sorry, I want to go this way. Normally, for there to be a good, well set up for sustainable agroforestry, you have to have these four components very well articulated. First, there must be clear goals for each type of agroforestry that you may propagate or rather may encourage your farmers to get in. And in this case, it is important to bring them together understand their needs and their concern economically, socially, and in terms of environment, so that you set goals. And therefore, when they plant trees, they know I'm planting this tree here, growing this mixture for this purpose. And so the kind of aspirations and expectations are known from the beginning. Otherwise, you'll get people going and planting trees and leaving them. They don't care for them because they don't have a future. They have no goal. And all that. Secondly, it requires effective engagement of partners and all stakeholders. It's important to realize that agroforestry takes place within a shared space, farmlands that are owned maybe by a family. And within this family, of course, is the head of the household, there is the wife, and there are the children, and also communities and the community around. It is very important if there has to be sustainable agroforestry for farmers, or rather for the stakeholders of that piece of land, to be involved in the planning and determining what is to be grown, what is to be mixed in which space, in order to avoid family conflicts and all these domestic issues and other types of troubles that can come. I can talk much on that in a later time. In Kenya, we have communities we call RUA, which plan all this. We call people together to plan together, and that helps to get lead or rather to ensure every stakeholder is informed what we're doing. Then there is participatory choice of trees and the crops. Then we have responsibilities, and cost should also be understood so that everybody knows what is or her responsibilities are. A sustainable agroforestry is driven first by market and marketability of the products that have already been designed in a system. Secondly, the availability and applicability of supportive traditional and indigenous knowledge systems, because people have come from a background. You must respect those backgrounds for you to succeed. Possible risk and mitigation of options and associated capacities need to have been identified, and ways of mitigating them, of course, discussed, so that people may end up doing the most appropriate kind of options in their farms. Social and institutional factors of our people and governance, and especially the policy that is ringing the regime on what is being done, where, at what time. All these issues are important in ensuring there is a sustainable agroforestry in practice. Chuka University, who? Okay. Time is off. Yes, but I can continue. Okay, I wanted to say Chuka University, where I am, of course, agroforestry program, as 2 programs that we are doing, which I'm leading. You can see one here where we have some greenhouse there. We have trees, we have everything being grown together. This is within an agricultural demonstration farm that I've established within Chuka University. It is meant to ensure that farmers can be able to do that. So there is also a Tharaka-Nithi Meru County's watershed and riverine rehabilitation project, which also has a lot. I do not have sufficient time to tell you this. You can see Chuka University, we have started BioGate. You can see everywhere we have put trees, everywhere we are growing. As a way, we have agricultural plots here and there in order to synergize and to bring in a green campus. That is Chuka University for you. You can see trees almost everywhere. Here we are making trees and creating space for animals to graze, but ensuring it a beautiful scenery for social forestry. If you pass by Chuka, you'll see this, what I'm talking about. This is our building. This is the science park, but in there is agricultural land with trees everywhere to ensure we have maintained a green ecosystem. Here is the choice of trees. You must negotiate with the people. These are seedlings we're going to plant somewhere, and those are, that is partnership between the university, the members of staff, the students, and the community in planting trees together. And so this collaboration with stakeholders is important. If you come back there, you find we are trying to plant trees. This is one area we plant, and we have put an environmental conservation system. That's the project we are implementing. It's me in my field work days. You can see we are trying to ensure the river lines are well covered in those areas, trying to advise farmers to grow trees even within the ecosystem. I want to say asanteni nyote, which means thank you all. And please welcome to Chuka.
Well, time well used, Doctor. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Dr. Zimmerman. Dr. Zimmerman is going to look at the techniques in Namibia, how agroforestry can be integrated, and specifically focusing on adaptive strategy. Quickly, while he's here, let me just say something about him. He's a part-time researcher at NUST, Namibia University of Science and Technology. He was born and schooled in Kenya, but worked for 12 years in Botswana's Department of Wildlife before settling in Namibia in 1992. Lecturing in Agriculture Department at what is now known as NUST until retirement in 2019. Now he's a part-time researcher for DIF Agri project under NUST, Mechanical Engineering Department. He's passionate about agroecology to regenerate nature's abundance. Please help me welcome Dr. Zimmerman.
What has to be pressed? Okay, wonderful. Okay, so this is about various approaches that have been tried in Namibia towards agroforestry. Oopsie, sorry. So the normal approach that has been used in Namibia for agroforestry has been planting of tree seedlings raised in growing bags in nurseries, which is quite an expensive procedure, not very efficient, that can be improved on, maybe reserved for only the valuable exotic species that need things like budding and grafting. So there are better options. Oops, sorry, what happened there? There was supposed to be, okay, yeah. So the better options would be, firstly, if there's still trees in the crop field, leave them and chop them in a way that benefits the agroforestry, that benefits the crops. So a very good example was in northwest Botswana, where the migrants from Angola settled sometime almost 100 years ago, I think, in the area called Etsa, to the west of the Okavango Delta. And their approach to crop farming was having amazing results, getting 4 times the average yield compared to the Botswana farmers. What they did, they used the chopping tools, like the axes they got at their wedding days and pangas, and selected what they wanted for building from the trees, what they wanted for the fencing. They used bush fencing so that initially they would clear out the lower bushes to make way for crops, use those bushes to pile up along the edges for fencing, and also leaving the natural bushes where they were already dense. Because the idea was that pretty soon there would be regeneration within those bush fences, and it would have live fencing around, so hardly any more need of maintenance. And the weeding is done not by uprooting the weeds, but simply wherever weeds were emerging, simply chopping some branches from bushes or trees and smothering them. And this very good method, unfortunately, died out in the 80s because of the government program that paid farmers to de-stump their fields so that then the tractor could come in and do the annual ploughing. So for the first few years, about 5 years, they had good yields still because of all that excess carbon that was in the soil, but that degraded over the years. And then when a drought hit, those fields unfortunately turned into dust bowls. Then, if insufficient trees remain, the method that's called the farmer-managed natural regeneration can be used for encouraging the growth of trees and bushes from the roots that remain underground. Managing them, pruning them, pollarding, whatever, that is a cheap way of getting quick growth, much faster than from seedlings that are planted in bags. Then if there's insufficient of the roots remaining, then other ways of encouraging the natural bushes and trees to grow can be enhanced, such as by planting or scattering out pods of, obviously, of the trees and bushes that have abundant pods or seeds, scattering them where there's protection, like along bush fences, within bush fences, or where there's mulch within the fields, and encourage the regeneration of those. Then, apart from the expensive growing bags that are quite big, take a long time in the nursery, if seedlings are to be raised and planted out young, they can be planted in toilet rolls, which is very convenient for planting out. So when the ground is wet, just getting a stick of the same diameter as a toilet roll, just smashing it into the ground to make a small pit for it and just plonk it in and then proceed very fast. So one of the agroforestry projects that was done in Zambezi for a 3-year period was in a maize field where it wasn't plowed or disked, but simply ripped, and the maize was planted in the rip lines. So there were 4 rip lines for maize, and then a line of trees, and that continued, and there were 8 different treatments replicated 8 times. The treatments included the control without trees. These are just species that were planted within the rows for the trees, 1 meter apart in the case of Bolosanthus, same with Peltiforum. The same was supposed to happen with Baphia, which is local to the area, but unfortunately the seedlings did not do well in the bags. So it was decided that for those that didn't survive, instead the farmer-managed natural regeneration would be done because thankfully, although the area had been cleared, there were still some roots underneath and they were emerging. So that method was just taking the nearest of those valuable bushes that came up. And Moringa also 1 meter apart. Then the Phaidobia for the tall canopies, the Anaboom, that one was 6 meter apart, but with, in one case, the Tephorisia legume bushes planted in between them, and in another case, with those same 4 species as in 2 to 5, just one after the other, and then the same, but also with bush mulch that would eventually come from trees that had been planted. But because initially they were still small and it was only a 3-year project, it was decided to just get that bush mulch from outside and bring that into the field, put it every month, because obviously the termites were working on it at a fast rate. Then the intention with the bushes that had been planted was that any that got over 1 meter, except for the Phaidobia, would then be pruned back for chop and drop mulching to encourage coppicing, encourage multiple branches, and have a good mulch cover. So the branches were just left, and the Moringa has good properties for enhancing plant growth. This is just showing one of the Baphia rows where instead just the natural regeneration was allowed to take place. Some of the results after the 2 years were the average heights attained from the different species. Unfortunately, the values on the x-axis are not appearing. They're too low. I don't know if it's possible to raise it somehow. But anyway, I can just tell you that Baphia is the one on the immediate left, and then it's Bolosanthus, then it is probably the, Phaidobia there, yeah, and then the most one are Moringa. Moringa grew the tallest, even, of course, they were still every year pruned back again, but this was just at the end of the 2nd season. So, and the numbers shown at the top of the columns are representing how many survived of them. So Moringa survived the best and grew the fastest. And then the last one is the Peltiforum. Yeah, thanks for putting the, lifting it up. And at the end of the third season, that was a very bad drought year. You can see the maize was just withered. There was absolutely no grain crop whatsoever from it. But the moringa did quite well and certainly would have satisfied farmers tremendously with a valuable harvest. In the case of the Peltiforum that had been raised in the nursery, and this is after the second year, growing not that fast, although it was second after the moringa. But then, thanks to Stefan, who took this photo 4 years at the end of the project, when it had been neglected, let's say the bush, the land was no longer used for crops, and moringa seemed to have died out, probably because of browsing, I'm guessing, but the Peltiforum survived very well and was establishing nicely. So it's just showing that if you are patient and wait a bit longer, you can get different results to the short-term projects. Again, another nice view of that Peltiforum. Then another approach that was used in that to try planting to see if that could improve survival is a method used in Australia called the long stem method, where they plant the plants deep down. So we just measure the height of the plant, and then the hole was augured to be 2/3 buried in, so only 1/3 remained above ground. And it certainly was not reducing the growth, but of course they started off being smaller, so they hadn't caught up at the end of the project with those that were planted without the long stem. And an interesting observation is that the type of bushes cut for the mulch, some of them retain the dew. They seem to attract it more and then hold on to it for longer. And of course, the mulch resulted in lower soil temperatures, so didn't bake the soil microbes too badly. Then another approach used in central Namibia for rangelands, where there's insufficient rainfall for trees unless something is done to divert extra water for them. So the approach used in a 30-hectare area, which we call the fruitful landscape, was to put in the contour ditches, also called swales, to spread the water and below them plant trees. So the students learned how to mark out the contours, which were then dug by a grader on two sides, so that on the upper side, when it filled with water and then spilled, it wouldn't cause a gully and erode further down, be lost, but rather spread in the ditch below to eventually, oops, sorry, what happened there? No, okay. Yeah, to eventually spread evenly, to be spread widely. Again, a typical type of permaculture approach. Oops, sorry for not getting this right. Okay, so even small rainfall does have time to then soak into the ground and wet it nicely. And after a few years, even some earthworms started to appear there. Normally, they wouldn't be in such areas, but only around pans. Then a diversity of trees were planted. Here, baobab, then moringa, and there's Ceratonia siliqua. This one in Windhoek, they call it Johannesbrood worm, with these huge sugary pods. And interesting that in a book that is in the Nust Library, there's mention of, in the 1950s, in Mopani Scrub in the Limpopo, this tree was planted, and they attained a yield of 20 tons per hectare of those valuable pods for feeding to animals. So remarkable potential. So here's some of the results from that fruitful landscape. This is just showing the number of the different species, with moringa again dominating there. And the red part is those that had been browsed on quite heavily by especially kudus. So that is one of the biggest problems, that the trees were attracting the game to feed on them. But various species, some chop and drop as well. So overall, could be productive. Then an urban example from the Category Youth Enterprise Center in Windhoek, where again, the contour ditches were dug, water was being trapped, trees were planted below, and extra water was brought in, or was coming in anyway, that had caused a gully that we repaired and put the water in sideways instead, so benefiting from this extra water. And the water would spill wherever it was a bit lower, because this was dug by hand, so it wasn't perfectly on contour. And where it went first is where now grass grew plentiful and started to lift up the soil there. So that with the next rain, it would find that that place is now protected and it would spill in the next best place. So this is like self-repair that was taking place, to have like a windscreen wiper effect where the flow of water changes from rain to rain. The abundant grass where the flood took place, where the water had escaped, and also planting aloes along the fence at the site. Then what happened was that the municipal inspector came along and found, just after a few hours after rain, found water still being held there, not yet soaked into the ground, declaring that this is a health hazard. No, this water has to be taken away. This is what they learn, the engineers. They learn that wastewater must be taken away as fast as possible, just like you see along Namibian roadsides. Always carry away the water, not appreciating the value for getting plants to grow. So all that work done by hand was, within a few hours of earth-moving machinery from the municipality, destroyed. It could be applied also in Namibia, like in Tucson, Arizona, where there's a very nice example of taking the water from the tar roads onto the sidewalks to plant valuable trees and make that a great playground for the kids, which normally it's too hot for them to play in the street, and to have valuable products from those trees for enterprises. Then an example of permaculture applied for a food forest at Vergenoeg in Omaheke, at the school hostel. And diversity of people involved, even the headman sitting on the chair there overseeing things. Mulch was the grass that had been cut from the sports field just outside there. And, well, okay, again, that ended in not very great success, because the inspector from Gobabis came along and again said this mulch is attracting snakes. It had to be cleared out and burnt. If you don't have earth-moving machinery or huge labor force to dig ditches, you can instead use the axes and that to cut the bushes and lay them on contour, and that encourages good grass growth, which then starts puffing up the soil and slowing down water so that it spreads nice and evenly and encourages plants to grow. And that could be done even in cattle farming, with having cleared strips on contour, leaving uncleared strips in between, and this is something that's been promoted by Johan Brouwer for large-scale application, but not yet applied. And that would imitate what is a natural procedure anyway. This is still existing southeast of Tses, in Karas region, of the natural banded vegetation. This is how nature had it before we came along and messed things up. Then we hope that this project can get on the way soon, this month or next month. Should have started last month at Rietfontein, where we want to use that abundant water for putting along in the drip irrigation to grow valuable fruit and nut trees, but interspersed with a lot of the chop and drop thornless species that can provide a good mulch and fertilize the soil. So I'm interested to see this afternoon's presentation where syntropic agroforestry has been applied in Namibia already. And this is a wonderful resource on food forests from Danau near Oshuarongo that is well worth watching these videos. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Zimmerman. You just gave us 3 minutes extra. Thank you so much for that. We're moving to our last presentation in this session on agroforestry systems in practices. We have 2 presenters who are going to have a conversation on how food forests mitigate climate change. Let me quickly just give you a brief on who is going to give us an input on that topic. It is Mr. Eins and Mr. Ferdinand. Quickly on Mr. Hines, he's a forest gardener, facilitator, also an independent consultant. Over the past 20 years, Mr. Hines has used permaculture and synergistic methodologies to create small and medium-sized foodscapes in different climate zones for communities, schools, and private individuals. In recent years, his focus has been more on successional agroforestry in the Namibian context and how the inclusion of livestock within these systems works. He also a passionate seed collector, he is a grower, and he's a sharer. While Mr. Ferdinand is a lead farmer, he's from the Namibia Nature Foundation. He's a small-scale farmer from Singalambwe in the Zambezi region in Namibia. He is practicing agroforestry and producing organic produce in his small garden. Can I have the two gentlemen join us here, and please help me welcome them. Okay, how are we going to do this? Okay, thank you.
Go for it, please.
Do you have a PowerPoint? You don't have a PowerPoint?
No, we do.
Oh, okay.
Let me
Then
flip
we have to
the screen.
flip that, yes. Okay, the time starts now.
Okay, great. So, hello everybody. We've been introduced, so we skipped that part. I'm just going to fire a few questions at Mate here. Hopefully you will enjoy our photos. Some are from his place, some I've just picked off the net, some are some photos I made myself. And we just want to share a little bit. We've been working together for 2 years, a bit more, somewhere around there. But maybe before we start, Mate can just explain to us a little bit where he came from, and I mean when he started his garden and how that looked, and then we dive into it.
Thanks for the opportunity given. I think it's still morning, afternoon, everyone. Yeah, I'm Mr. Mate Ferdinand Ponahazo, all the way from Zambezi region in Kongola constituency, in Kwando Conservancy. I'm a small farmer. I produce more. I started farming almost 10 years back. So I produce little by little. I don't run to sell, but I start to feed my stomach. This is when I can start selling. So the most important of farming is to feed ourselves before we give out. So I'm a little farmer, but what I farm is everything that I do is organic. If you need to eat organic food, please consult me, then you'll enjoy my food. I thank you.
Right, great. So maybe I just wanted to quickly mention succession, ecological succession, because this is quite important. We can grow trees, or we can grow a garden, we can build a farm, but if we incorporate succession, thinking about how is this going to develop over a longer term is a different approach than just growing crops or just planting a tree for shade. Yeah? So the system, we really have to think about how's my system going to evolve over time and space. And this is quite crucial, I find, and very important to create a really good system. Yeah? And not always fighting nature because somehow it's getting ahead of us, which is really important. All right, so first topic I want to talk about with you is biodiversity. This is not Ferdinand's place, not yet. But I just wanted to show a picture of a syntropic system, I guess this is, which is very dense with a lot of diversity in it. And I just wanted to ask you if you can explain to us a little bit what the diversity was like when you started off, the types of crops you were growing, and kind of what it looks like now, and maybe even looking a little bit into the future.
Thank you. How you started, it was not looking so nice. more especially due to the plants that I planted by that time, and also the flowers that I planted. So after I engaged with the NNF and the skills that I catched, so I started to plant and to uplift the soil, adding fertilities in the soil. So it came to...
Just tell us what plants you started with, maybe, just to give the people an idea of what you were growing.
Okay, I started with guavas and bananas and the papayas, so that the plant that I started, and crops.
So what kind of crops were you growing?
Maize and sorghum millet.
Rain-fed?
Yeah, rain-fed, yeah.
Right, and now you have what, just not all of them, might be too long, but just give us a few of the things you have growing now.
Yeah, actually now I'm based on the guavas and the bananas, because I'm using the shower pit to produce, because it's the way I produce the good soil there.
Okay. So I put these things together here just to show what biodiversity could mean. Maybe you can also refer to some of these and tell us what's happening in the shower pit or some of the areas where you see increased biodiversity.
Yeah, more especially in my garden, as you see, with some flowers, I have some bees there trying to work. So as the garden is looking nice, so I attracted bees. So I have some bees that I have already in my garden, and it's just a reception. It's where they used to come. After I catch them, then I transfer them to the river sides where I have some harvest. And also the soil has become nice. That's why you see even when I plant some flowers there, they are growing nice. I also use the chicken's manure to add in the shower pit, and the cow manure to add in the shower pit. And I also prune those guavas that I said. I make a biochar so that I add in the soil just to keep the moisture. It should not just go deep. That's what I do.
Okay, so that takes us to the healthy soils. So maybe I can just say something that I've observed when I came to visit you the first time, and also working in the region or in the country, all over the country actually, is that very often soils are exposed. Yeah, so people have crops growing or trees growing, but most of the soil is bare. And this is a cultural thing that we need to address, yeah? So we need to stop cleaning everywhere because it's not helping the soil, right?
Yeah.
Oops. There we go. So this is, the photo on the left is future Mate, but the two photos on the right, that's at Mate's place. And this is just showing us what we were doing to bring in organic material. You can see on the far right, Mate eating his papayas, I guess. Wow. And what were you bringing in to feed your soil?
Yeah, what really I bring to feed the soil, if you look at the left side there, you see some timbers. Those are the Mongongo timbers. They are very soft. I used to use them to put them in the shower pit because they are soft, they hold the water capacity. So also you add the biochars, you take the cow manure, you mix them, those leaves, you cover the soil so that immediately when the water is falling there, then the moisture it will be kept. So the water will just not go direct in the underground, but will be kept where the roots are. So that's the most important that we should do. Just I used the timbers and trees which is soft, not hard, that can serve as a sponge. When the water is there, it will capture the moisture, and the moisture will stay along there. Then anything that you plant there, it will be looking fine.
Yes, and in the middle photo you can see is a lot of lead farmers from NNF. What we were doing there is actually make a trench, because we've realized the soil up there is so sandy that the water just drops down to a deeper level, and especially vegetables and the shallow-rooted plants have no access to this moisture. So by putting this in, it becomes like a sponge. I think you said that. And so there are these islands, or we call them biotopes, or biobatteries, or whatever you want to call it, all over his yard now, that hold moisture, but they also have fungus and lots of microbial activity starting to really become active. All right, so next one, microclimate. That's the famous shower pit that you've heard 3 times or 4 times already. Maybe you can just tell us a little bit about what it was like before and what it's now, and how does it feel being in that space?
Yeah, at first it was not looking nice before I made the soil, because we are the one who used to destroy the soil, and we are responsible to make the soil. So at first the soil was destroyed, and I planted some banana. They were not fruiting. They were not giving me anything. So after I started to make the soil, I take a hole there by 3 meters by 1.5. I started adding those timbers and dry leaves and grass and cow manures. And whenever I'm taking shower, it's where I stand there. It's where I stand there and I take shower. So after that moisture is organized in the soil, now you see the bananas, now they are rich now. So I'm no more buying bananas from other shops. I'm eating my banana in my house. So I'm very happy for that.
Just to maybe add to this, it's a little courtyard behind Mate's bedroom, and it is always cool in that spot. It can be cooking hot out there, and you don't want to go out into the sun, but here it doesn't matter. It is a really nice, cool environment. And we've created a few of those around his house. So there are just like the biotopes, islands of microclimate. And the idea is, because the landscape is so bare and so radiant, there's so much open soil everywhere that the sun is just radiating back up. And the idea is to grow out from these islands, not to go out and try and cover the entire farm of his in one step, but to go in small steps. This graph here on the left, I think everybody can understand that and see what's going on there. That explains itself. Here on the far right, there's a photo of the same system that Dr. Zimmermann was talking about just now, where Carol is standing in the middle of it. So that's the Peltiforum. And you can see how tall these trees are. And I don't know exactly when you started, but this was about 2 years ago when we took the photo, and most of the trees had been burned down by a veld fire and regrown, and it's completely neglected because it's fenced and it's locked and nobody's using this space. And sometimes cattle come in, so they open the fence at the back and they come in. So the moringas are still there, some of them, much taller than the Peltiforum. I think it just shows what's possible, even thriving on neglect. Yeah, and there's an amazing layer of mulch. You can't really see it, but the entire ground between those rows is covered by the leaves dropping off from the trees. I just wanted to show these pictures because it is so crucial to keep the winds out of our landscapes here. They are totally underestimated in terms of dehydration. Yeah, so we're losing so much water just by the wind itself. No? So any tree, shrub, hedges, which you can maybe also talk about, the types of mitigation you have on your side to stop wind and create microclimate.
Yeah, at my garden, it's almost, it's big, but the other side I have a living fence that I did, where it broke the wind, which might come in my garden and try to destroy my vegetables. So I realized that we farmers, every now and then we work with the soil. So I realized that where I put some living fence, there is life, the soil is life there. But where there is no fence, it seems everything that I put there, it's not growing nice. So I've seen that it's important to put trees They prevent what we grow from the wind, and they help us a lot. We chop them and we use them. We don't throw in the garden. Everything that we chop is useful in the soil.
And Mate also has trees throughout his garden. So he's got fruit trees throughout his garden, and some are closer together, and you can really feel the temperature difference around those areas. And it's also, I don't know if you remember the photo from the beginning with the sunflowers, those areas are these areas that are getting more water, because we also took some water off the roof to feed those biotopes. But it's kind of starting to create little microclimates. And you also have trellises of grapes and passion fruit,
Yeah.
which is more for the social areas, but that's so important. You know, where do we go now? Maybe if we're outside, not in the house, we stand under the tree. So the more shade we can create, the more we change that climate. Yeah, I think you can maybe talk a little bit about what's going on here.
As you see, if you have seen my picture, I cannot even show you that's me. It's Mate with the family. You see, once we eat, then everyone is happy. We are here because we ate. If we could not eat, we could not even manage to organize this meeting. So as you see, that's what I'm doing in my garden. You see the kids there, the small ones. Now the smallest guy that will sit down there, he knows how to plant the guava, that one. So even when he's going to grow, he knows that my uncle used to do this. So they are holding guavas, they are enjoying. I'm holding some bottles of honey there. So everything, I'm happy with what I'm doing. I thank you.
Yeah, this is the last slide, and I chose these two photos with a water topic because I think this is really crucial. The Mate, for instance, he's got I think his garden is about 1,600 square meters, tiny. It's less than 0.2 hectares. It's only 500 meters away from an enormous body of water, the Kwando River. Yeah. And the idea for everybody growing crops around there, or fruits or whatever, is always to get a borehole or access to one of these water bodies. But if we would give everybody access to water, if they wanted to grow something, we would, excuse my French, piss away that water very quickly. And we will drain out those water bodies. The same with the underground aquifers. So I just want to say it is really crucial to go through these steps that we've just showed you and make sure that the soil is covered, properly covered, either by trees, ideally by growing plants, not just by mulching, because the soil life is different in areas where there is active photosynthesizing plants compared to just mulch. So this is not very far away from Mate, actually. And you can see what's happening. We've removed huge areas of trees. And actually the forest that used to be there was already degraded because the bigger trees you can see around the homesteads, you can't find them in the areas between the fields. They're already gone as well. So we're dehydrating the landscape on a massive scale. And we really need to do these practices of shading the soil, feeding the soil, covering the soil before we start pumping any water. Yeah, yes. And I don't know, maybe you say something to that? Because Mate and I, we've been talking about how to get water from there to his property for a long time because of economic reasons it's not possible. But also to realize what might happen if we do take water from the river.
Yeah, maybe to come to the conclusion, we are here to make our soil rich. So everything that we add in the soil, without moisture, it won't work. So we need water so that we can make our soil rich, so that whatever we're going to plant there, it will have fruits. So we are busy putting mulching, we are using organic, So if there is, we are just having challenges of water. So if we could have enough water, we small farmers, give us water, then we will see what we are going to do for the nation. Not only for the stomach, but for the nation. I thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mate and Stefan. Oops. Okay, we just finished session 2. I would like to open up for questions or comments from the floor. Okay, where are the roaming mics are here. Can those who help us to...
Not a question, but just a comment to emphasize the importance of the last presentation you've just heard. Water does not just come from rivers, it does not just come from the rain, it also comes from the way you manage your own land. Figuring out how to keep the soil covered is going to be the solution to farming absolutely everywhere and not just in Namibia. So I'd like to congratulate Mate and Stefan in bringing that across.
Thank you. Any other comment or question? Yeah, there are two. One here and the other one at the back.
I'm not sure whether it's a comment or I have to compliment for what they've just given us here.
Give it a try. We'll decide which one is which.
Now, let's say people in Windhoek that wants to have a garden. Maybe somebody can answer this. Is the fertile okay, or we just need enough water to start your own garden?
Okay, that's a fair question. Thank you so much. At the back, yes. Do you have the mic? Oh, okay, use this one. Can somebody please answer that? From what he just had, can I just go home and start a garden? Do I only need water or do I need something else? Yes, go ahead.
My name is Tine Ageno. I work with Women Environmental Program. I'm from Nigeria. And so I was wondering if taking it forward from the practice which they are doing, if we can suggest that we begin to have sewage systems where the bathrooms are connected to free land, for lack of a better word, so that we have waters from which we bathe ourselves available. Because from our basic knowledge of using our feces for energy, I am also told that the feces which is to be used for energy production does not need to be contaminated, quote unquote, with the water with which we've taken our bath. So perhaps we could begin to have that separation systems where we bathe with waters and then they overflow to the land, and then where we have feces, that is used for the biodigesters. Great way forward, I think.
Thank you. Thank you for that insight. There's a question there and another one there. Yeah. Just stay there. No, first the lady at the back. Yes, here. Yeah. Keep your hand up. Yes.
Thank you. My name is Erastus Ngaruka from Agribank. I'm very proud of Mate. Keep it up. So what I would like to know is that do you have livestock and how do they benefit from your plantations?
Yes, Mate, that's a good question. Thank you. The lady at the back. Yes.
Hello, I'm Soini. I'm a master student from the University of Namibia. So I was just impressed by Dr. Zimmerman's results of Moringa. So I was having an experiment in Kunene region. I was working on a restoration project where I was focusing on the effect of neighbor species and distance apart the seedlings, if they may facilitate or inhibit the growth or establishment of other species. So I was as well working with Moringa oleifera and Faldebia albida, Mopane, and other species. So when I grew Moringa, it was actually growing faster as the results depicted. However, it grows faster and then it starts shedding off the leaves, and it was also affected by many insects. So it was under many challenges. That after the insects even finish all the leaves from Moringa, they even go to the next seedlings. And then that affected the grass around that germinated after we started restoring or growing the seedlings, and even the next seedlings that they are competing with. So I was just wondering how, if that they experienced the same challenge when they were growing it with maize meal and other species, and if you if you encounter that problem, maybe what could you do to solve that problem? And maybe it's also considerable to consider such things before you intercrop. Okay.
Okay, yes. Our last question for this session? Okay, here, and then I'll allow the lady at the back to ask the last question. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, Madam Chase, I'll put them all in one because it's one for you and then one for
One
the speakers.
for me?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, Madam Chase, first one. Since we're talking all about agriculture here, is Minister of Agriculture involved in this discussion? First question. To Dr. Zimmerman. Doctor, I just wanted to, if you can potentially ask this question in terms of plant species and the indigeneity per region, because each particular region, just like we heard in the first set, in the first phase, that each region might have differences in climate, differences in soil types, and differences in terms of the biodiversity that's present there. Would it be okay to adopt the particular strategy that you had, or is it a notion of use the plant species, that are indigenous to a region?
Okay.
Last question, which is in this, is just a question to the last two presenters about average water cost. Because the assumption is that that's a communal area in terms of if you had to do rural versus urban backyard gardening, which is horticulture, what is the impact there? What did you pay, Mr. What's the guy's name? Faridante. Yeah, Faridante.
Mate, yeah, Mate.
What, Mr. Mate, what did you pay per average per month? And what is that vis-a-vis urban?
Okay.
Just to supplement his question that he asked earlier.
Okay. Yes, our last question.
Okay, morning. My name is Lydia Hon. I'm from the University of Namibia, a research coordinator there. I'm actually not having a question, but responding to a question about the gardening.
Okay,
I'm involved with, of course, I'm not from the city of Windhoek. I'm involved with the gardening at Farm Kukuna, and also having my own garden at home because I love plant, backyard. The challenge in Windhoek could be the water, because most of the time you plant and we have a lot of plant also experiment from mushroom to plants and etc. in the greenhouse. Despite that being in the greenhouse, they also just die off during winter and then you have to start off. And of course the water bill at the university also, it gets so huge that you have to be blocked to say, okay, don't use so much water and etc. If there could be mechanism maybe of water harvesting that could restore water use and also to help the people in the rural, or like what Dr. Wanga was saying in the informal settlement where they could have water to do gardening, then I think it will be really something that could be useful in the city. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can we have Mate to have a mic? And Dr. Zimmerman, could you also have a mic? Before you start answering some of these questions, I just want to answer mine. Is there anybody from agriculture here? Please, can you give us a wave of hand? Well, that's a pity. Oh, they are what? Okay, but I think that department is quite big to have given us people. But I'm hoping, as we are streamlining, where is Mr. Who? Oh, okay, there is somebody from agriculture. Have we answered your question? Not really? Well, really, they are here, and some of them are probably online watching. But I get your point, that we need the representative from government here, yeah? Okay, can you just repeat that with the mic?
As I mentioned in my presentation, I'm 3 months at NAST. Initially, I was invited as a representative from the Ministry of Agriculture.
Initially, and formally? Okay.
I have shifted to NAST from the Ministry.
Oh, you shifted to NAST,
yes.
Okay. But we get the message, okay, that we really need to have the players, all the players, especially from the ministry, to also be part of this. Mate, can you attempt to some of those questions?
All right, if I still remember, the first question is about, do I have livestock in my family? Yeah, actually, I don't have livestock, but I do support to those people who are close by me. I cut like pigeon peas, anything that I cut there, I give them to their livestock in the exchange of getting the Kauma ducks.
What? Meat?
Manure, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, you need to have a mic to talk with.
What do you use? Do you bath with clean water or you use detergents?
Okay, on the shower pit, every soap is allowed there. It's only Savlon. Savlon soap is not the one who is not allowed there because it will kill the bacteria inside.
Okay.
But every soap you can use on the shower pit.
Okay. You cannot talk without the mic. It's the golden rule.
I mean, you can use most soaps. A lot of the bacteria will actually, and the fungi will take care of it as long as it's in moderation. So, there is a balance there.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, Mate, can you answer the question on the water usage? How much do you spend? Where do you get your water?
Yeah, on the water, I'm using the community water. So it's a big challenge whereby the community, they used to insult me, but I just ignore because I know what I'm doing. So I used to blind them. Once I receive a lot of guavas, I take them to the school. I give from grade 1 up to grade 5, giving them guavas. So just to reduce the weight that they are coming to me.
Okay,
so,
that's a good strategy.
Yeah, so.
Okay, I mean, I just want to know, when you say community water, is it?
Yeah, it's a borehole. It's a community borehole, whereby it's used by a lot of people.
Okay.
So it's where I used to steal
Okay.
them. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
You've got the... All right, can you give the mic to, Dr. Zimmerman?
Yeah, on the question on moringa, no, we didn't experience the insect damage, but admittedly, it loses its leaves earlier than most other species in the dry season. But what I have experienced at another farm near Okahanja, where it was being attacked by the red spider mite and some insect, was that spraying 3 times a week with dilute wood vinegar completely solved the problem. Those ones that got the wood vinegar, they resprouted very fast. The other ones that didn't get it, they continued to suffer. On the question of, or the concern about the frost, that's where agroforestry can actually help tremendously with having large canopied trees to reduce the cold. So there's a very nice example at Kaisosi, just east of Rundu, at the Ministry of Agriculture site there, where they have got beautiful, tall Anaboom Fedobia, and underneath there are rows with mangoes and citrus. And one year when there was a terrible frost around there, and it was so sad to see where there was one big mango plantation, all the trees had completely frosted right back. But those mangoes growing under the Fedobia were doing fine. I have to be reminded of another question that...
Yeah, I also have to be reminded. What was the other question? Okay.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. So the question about the species, yes, definitely. Each area has different species that obviously will be the ones that contribute to the agroforestry. In the case of introduced species, obviously where there are indigenous species that are fruit-bearing or nut-bearing and that, they can be bred to have bigger, better fruits and nuts. But that takes quite a few years, so we still have to depend on those exotics from outside. But again, of course, there are those that are adapted and not, so obviously it has to be known what does well where. But in terms of water management, the rules of physics, the laws of physics are the same regardless. That rain falls from the ground, it either goes into the ground or runs off, a bit of both. We want to increase the amount that goes in and reduce the amount that goes off. And once it's in, we want to keep it there for as long as possible and not evaporate out. So that applies everywhere. Of course, it means that things like rainwater harvesting structures and that for dry areas would have to be wider spread, bigger catchment areas for smaller planting areas.
Okay.
I just quickly want to add a few things there. Thanks, Dr. Zimmerman. pest and disease issues, yeah, and I think Jonathan, right? You mentioned something earlier. This has something to do with it. Systems in Namibia, especially agroforestry systems, will take a while to establish, to get to a state where it's stable and starts to thrive, right? In a tropical situation, this is very easy and can be done very quickly. Here, it takes time. My estimation is if you do it well, 3 to 4 years to get to a stable situation. You're not going to have major output by then, except for biomass. Yeah, so the first step should be biomass, not food. And that's a tricky one, because we want to eat. But we need to feed that soil and keep that soil covered and change the soil structure with the biomass that we put in. So that's a longer process. Now, once we've done that and the soil structure changes, the nutrient availability in the soil becomes much higher, the plants become stronger, and then something like spider mite will not be an issue anymore because the stronger plants will not be attacked by fungus and pests. Yeah, so it's a time issue. Just quickly on the rainwater catchment thing, I've been doing this for 15 years here in Windhoek. It is a lot of hard work because you need to dig around a lot, and usually you do that in the dry season when the soil is rock hard. But you can change a landscape completely. You will not recognize that landscape anymore once the water is caught in the landscape. Yeah? So you can, even in winter, produce crops if you, like Mr. Zimmerman says, create a canopy or a microclimate that keeps the cold away. And just lastly, there's a great example maybe for an urban environment, village homes in California. It's famous because it produces more food than what the people can eat in terms of not grains, but everything else. And it's a high-density urban plot. I don't know, 160 homes on it or something. And the water table underneath these homes has risen to such an extent that they cannot exploit all that water anymore, just through earthworks.
Mm-hmm. Is it a comment or a question? Okay, if it's a comment, keep it short.
Thank you. There was a concern about water in Windhoek, and I have lived here for a while. And in terms of soil amendments to make it work, there are things that I have done that I think probably other people should consider. Here in Auersblick, where the soil is also very hard, where we started, instead of tilling the land, what I did was go to, just after the agriculture show, pick up the compost that is there. It's not always going to be nice. The wife and the kids were not very amused when I first brought that. But after I put in that compost, quite a big layer of that, I think around the garden I put about 10 centimeters. I then went to, there is a place there by the graveyard where they, Pioneers Park, yes. So I took those wood shreddings, probably around about 7 centimeters of that, covered it on top, and that soil was good to go in just about a year. And other than that, we then grew a whole lot of trees, mangoes, guavas, peaches, you name it. We had pretty much everything there, and because of the diversity, I think those crops, they actually managed to protect each other through the cold, and to this day we harvest from all those trees.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing. There is one more last comment. No, man, guys.
Thank you very much. I just also wanted to comment with regards to indigenous trees, if it can be used for agroforestry. In Namibia, when we go to the northern regions, we've been already practicing agroforestry. It's just that perhaps it's not well documented. in okra field, you find marora trees, and I have pedicianas, rotanenis. Those ones were used for agroforestry purposes. And then most of them, they are fruit trees. So now it's just that maybe the fruit trees were not like well researched, but as for now, with other projects like NNF, they are in a process to ensure that these products are developed into marketable products.
Okay.
So that we can able to increase the yield or the economy of the local people. They've been practicing it, but it's not just, they were well exposed to.
And their way of life.
Yeah. When it comes to exotic trees like mangoes and guavas, those are the species that are mostly affected by frost. But our indigenous species, like maroras and others, they are not, they are more resistant.
Okay, thank you.
To crop.
One more at the back there from Zambia.
Thank you very much. To me, it's a recommendation from the previous presenters. You know, as far as we are promoting agroforest, I think we need to reconnect ourselves to nature. You know, when we are talking about water sources, we are actually basing our concerns on the rivers. But there are so many water sources. Take, for instance, the rivers. We have got rivers from the tree leaves. We have got rivers on the earth, those that we are able to see. We have got also rivers underground. So we have to ensure that as we are promoting agroforest, let's connect ourselves to nature to ensure that all these river sources, they are being taken care of. You know, there are Amwe facilitators as well in agroecology. So many people that have brought up the issue of water harvest. This is so cardinal. If you cannot conserve water underground, it means that whatever we are going to plant, those plants actually will not flourish. So we have to ensure that whatever approach we are going to do as we are spearheading this, let's reconnect ourselves to nature. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of session 2. I'm about to release you to have lunch. We're supposed to be back here by, I think 20 to 2. But I'm going to allow you to have your full lunch, like 1 to 2. And when 2 strike, I will be here wanting to start with those of you who have honored the time. And please don't eat our food and disappear. I'm expecting everybody to come back here. I'm expecting everybody to come back here. Please don't go yet.